Katharine, how are you? Welcome to Biophilic Solutions.
Hello, friends. I wish I was in Serenbe with y'all today. That would really make this the juiciest possible conversation.
I know.
But you will be soon.
I
That's
will
right.
be soon. Maybe in the past when listeners hear this, but yes, we're coming. Climate Wayfinding and I are coming to Serenbe and to wonderful hills and hamlets.
Yes, we're super excited. We're thrilled to have you on the podcast with Steve Nygren, who's joining as our co-host today. This is a new format for us. And so just for our listeners, which is really fun, is Steve has chosen Katharine to be our guest, which is sort of the model that we're doing on Biophilic Solutions for this season. And with his book, Start in Your Own Backyard, and your new book, Climate Wayfinding, it's all about connecting people to nature, and it's all about finding a sense of agency in the community. And it just feels really aligned with both of your work. So I want to just jump right in with the new book. Your original book, All We Can Save, was phenomenal compilation of stories. And this next project, Climate Wayfinding, had come to life in sort of a different way. The message is super resonant and important right now. So I'm just going to jump in and ask you, talk to me about the book. It's super layered. And I know you've known Steve forever. So, bring his concepts in as well. And basically, congratulations too, because we know how hard it is to get a book out and what a big lift that is. So welcome to the podcast and tell us all about the book.
Well, thank you so much. And yes, Steve and I think, share a real passion for helping people translate the concern that we know people have, the care we know people have, the love that we know people have into meaningful action and contribution, right? And that is really what this book is about. We know that the majority of people are worried about climate change. 89% of people around the world want to see their governments doing more to take action and implement solutions. But it is a very small percentage of people who have actually gotten off the sidelines and into some kind of doing, right? And at the end of the day, we can have the best possible solutions in the world, but if we are not actively helping move those solutions into reality in every community, in every organization, in every possible corner, we just aren't going to be able to realize the future that I think we all know we need and that we really actually want to live in. So this book is designed to help people do that, to look inward with care, kind of the introspective inner work, to look outward with curiosity, exploring the landscape of solutions, community, context, and ultimately to look forward, not with certainty in this rapidly changing world that we live in, but with a sense of courage, right? To cast our imaginative wisdom, our visions forward, and then begin to take steps towards what we can see.
Mm-hmm. And I love how you said that courage versus sort of, it's not that we aren't curious, we are, but it's like we need that more than ever, is that courage to step into the truth. And I'm also struck by that 89% because it doesn't feel that way, does it? I mean, we feel that, but it doesn't feel like anybody's making moves that way, or at least the media is not talking about it. What do you find in your conversations out there with the public when both, because you guys are, I'm sure, both out on the road all the time at conferences? What are you hearing from people? Do you feel that 89%?
Everyone cares,
Mm-hmm.
but no one knows or has the will to step into action.
I think we see sometimes that caring can feel really overwhelming, right? And that often we tell ourselves we don't know enough, we're too small to make a difference, right? That somehow there are experts out there who are the ones who should be handling this.
Mm-hmm.
And there are experts. It's wonderful to have experts. But I think a lot of times what gets us stuck is actually the heaviness that we feel around these issues, right? A sense of grief, a sense of fear, maybe a sense of outrage that so many people in positions of power have not been leveraging those positions of power for our shared planet that we are so lucky to live on. And so that's part of why we start with the inner work in climate wayfinding. And this book actually grew out of an experiential learning and leadership program that we've built and begun to scale at the All We Can Save project. It runs now on more than 50 college and university campuses across the US and Canada. And we see that motivation is really high, but that sense of where do I fit in? How do I get unstuck from the hard things that I feel? And how do I find those footholds in community? Those are often the areas that, as Steve says, kind of keep people, worried, but maybe not turning worry
Mhm.
into action.
Do you find a real change from the generations? I find everyone born in this century has been born into a fragile world that they're aware of. And
Yeah.
the older you get, especially my generation, it's always worked out, and they tend to shrug, have another drink, and wait for it to pass.
Mm.
Mm,
I see a real difference. The younger they
mm,
are, the more they're passionate about doing something.
mm. Gosh, that makes me so sad in a way because
I know.
I think and this is part of why I've been so passionate about taking this program into spaces where there are students, where there are young people who are figuring out, not just how can I help, but how am I going to cope, right?
Mhm.
Shaping a life on a planet where so much is being lost and so much is still possible, right? I think we owe it to them to help them orient, to help them navigate this very tricky time. And I wish your experience, Steve, was that more of the elder generations were like, yeah, let's take some responsibility for the world that we've left for young people. It's really shockingly unfair, the
Mhm.
situation they've been
That's why I'm
given.
trying to open their eyes, and
Mm,
if the baby boomers could just work with these young people,
yes.
we could really get some things
Mhm.
done.
I
As
mean, imagine what people could do with their retirement years,
Well, that's the idea.
Not just golfing.
Exactly, exactly, and that's part of the responsibility of the older
Mm,
generation is joining and fixing the mess that we've made over these
yeah,
last several decades.
Yeah,
I
and
couldn't
that's
agree more.
interesting. I was just talking to my father-in-law last night, who's in his late 80s, and he's very involved in San Francisco, outside of it. And he was saying that he's, got a lot of purpose. He's on these boards. He's really helping young musicians and also Berkeley Art Museum. And he said that so many of the people, when he goes to his Kiwanis Club every
Mm,
week, is they're just in between golf tee times and they're bored. And then for the kids, the universities and I'm curious, like, so when you so for the All We Can Save project, I've been
yeah.
following that for years. It's wonderful. Did you find that you went to, kind of, it was abroad, anybody could create a project in their town or in their community, but when you sort of honed in on those universities, was it because, sort of to Steve's point, maybe inadvertently you were finding the passion, they were still figuring out their lives? Like, tell me a
Mm,
little bit about that, and then I wanna pull that back into the structure of this new book and the guides and the discussion. So, I'd love
perfect.
how did you hone in on that demographic or that target, and
Mm,
then how has
yeah.
that informed the new book and the structure?
So the first pilots that we ran of the Climate Wayfinding program were in 2022. And we did 5 of those pilots, and people of every age, every career stage, longtime grizzled, maybe burned out climate veterans,
Mm,
curious, bright eyed climate newbies, people who had spent their careers in other spaces and wanted to come into climate. It really ran the gamut. And it was really exciting to see that this process, the inward, outward, forward, and the creative approaches, the reflective and kind of mindful approaches that we bring into the work, the relational aspects of it, like all of that is incredibly generative no matter where you are on your climate journey, right? And it was really exciting that year. We have a framework that we call the 8 dynamics of climate engagement. If folks want to learn more about that, you can find it on allwecansave.earth. And these are the things that need to be true for deep, sustained, courageous engagement, not just a one off action, but really stepping into this work with depth and with a sense of longevity. Because at the end of the day, we know that this is a lifetime's worth of work that we're talking about. And we were totally jazzed. At the end of that year, people were, moving from a sense of overwhelm, stuckness, feeling really depleted into renewal, clarity, energy, a sense of purpose and possibility. But the question for us, we're a tiny, tiny nonprofit, was how do we make this program available in any kind of way that meets the need, right? It's not going to be our team running retreats of 24 people, although I love doing those. It is just such a delight. And there's such a clear use case in higher education. So we thought, well, let's start there. Let's run a test cohort with students, and let's run a test cohort with faculty and staff. So we had students and faculty and staff who came from all different institutions, community colleges, liberal arts colleges, big research institutions, HBCUs, like it really ran the gamut. And they were all super enthused. And then the question for us was, how do we package this up so that other people can facilitate? And so that's what we've done over the last couple of years. We've run trainings for faculty and staff. There are now 90 trained facilitators. We're going to train another 100 facilitators at the Omega Institute in August. And what's really exciting this year, we have lots of folks still from higher ed, but it's going to include people from cultural institutions, community organizations, other climate leadership programs, anywhere where people are thinking about how do we help people with the sense making that needs to happen so that they can figure out their unique roles and ways to contribute. And as we packaged it all up for these facilitators, I realized, oh, there is a book in here. There's a book in here. And so that was such a joy to take content from this experiential program and bring it onto the page. And that includes essays that share some of my climate journey, as well as some of the key ideas and frameworks of climate wayfinding. It includes curated poetry from luminaries like Tracy K. Smith, Ada Limon, Jane Hirschfield. I think poetry is so important in all of this. It includes stories of other climate leaders, Sister True Dedication, who's a monastic with Plum Village, Sherry Mitchell, who's an amazing author, teacher, Indigenous leader in Maine, Colette Pichon Battle, who is an activist who works on the Gulf Coast of Louisiana, just extraordinary people who are lighting the way for so many of us. And it has the journal prompts, the creative mapping exercises, a reading group experience that's built right into the pages. So it's not just a book that talks to you, but it's one that actually walks with you through this exploration. And Steve, as you were talking about the older generation, and Monica, the bored gentlemen with their tea times, I'm like, man, wouldn't it be amazing if there were reading groups of elders and youngsters actually exploring this together and kind of tending the soil.
Do it, Steve.
Right?
Steve, Ambassador, we'll figure that out. I literally was writing down starting your own backyard needs a guide, but because there is that sort of next step after you write a book is sort of, okay, how are people reacting to it? What are they asking for? And that's a huge part of it, is they're sort of asking. It is a little bit of a guide already, but it's not a prescription, So,
but it's your lighting the way story, Steve.
Exactly. Yeah.
Truly.
In our way.
Well, and I like everything that you're saying about, the mindfulness and the sense making. And we've heard a lot about the term climate journey over the years on Biophilic Solutions, because I think it gives people an opportunity to step in. Where in the past, a lot of climate has been a wagging finger saying you should be doing these things. And I think a lot of us have
no one wants to go to that party.
No one wants to go to that party where I'm being told I'm doing everything wrong. I think it's like, where am I on my journey? And then how can I step in and join in and be a part of the community? And I do think the mindfulness, and we can use that term broadly to include meditation or yoga or group, whatever, I think you need that to slow down and stop. And I think that's an
Mm,
interesting, part of the book is really thinking about journal prompts and poetry, which I think are part of that mindfulness journey.
yes.
And I love that you bring poetry in because I think we've lost, a little bit of that touch point to arts and culture
Mm,
just universally. And how can we bring beauty back
yes.
into what we're doing and not just
I found is we can reach people through their heart, which is through the
yeah.
arts versus through the
Yes.
intellectual, which is
Mhm.
uh, the lecture and the
Mhm.
logical.
Mhm. Well,
Truly.
and so you're really reframing it in a very refreshing way.
Mm,
And so, we were going to sort of touch on climate anxiety a little bit, but I think we've already
mm,
sort of done that. And I think the way you're presenting it helps us. Part of it is the mindfulness has come down from the anxiety, realize we're in this together. So to talk a little bit about,
mm,
which we always love solutions.
mm,
Um, Talk a little bit how you are thinking about reframing the conversation, and a lot of that has come out of the All We Can Save projects, and then into this wayfinding, which is a
mm,
beautiful way to think about it. Like
mm,
again, back to the journey.
mm.
Um, Talk about how we're not lacking the solutions; they're
We're
there.
not. We're not.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
are not lacking the solutions. The book that I worked on and the project that I worked on before All We Can Save is Drawdown. I wrote most of that book, and then the follow-on publication, the Drawdown Review, that came out March 2020. Tough timing for a little publication
Yeah.
to land in the world. But that body of work was all about what's in our toolbox, right? What are the solutions that we already have? They're already working. We know enough about them to be able to assess, how much of the problem can each one of these help to address, from wind turbines and solar panels to electric vehicles and public transportation, regenerative agriculture, green buildings, right? You name it. It was all in there. But the solutions are not what we're short on.
Yeah.
There are still some tricky pieces, right? And there are still some of what we call hard to decarbonize sectors like air travel, like cement and steel. We're seeing some innovation in some of those, but most of it, we've got it. We have it in hand. But we have a lot of forces that are trying to kind of keep us held in the world we're currently living in, the systems and structures, and in particular, the fossil fuel economy.
Mhm.
And we don't have enough participation. There is a leadership crisis at the heart of the climate crisis. That is a piece I've talked about a lot, and I wrote in All We Can Save, and I still feel that really strongly.
Mhm.
And I think we have not done a good job of being intentional about cultivating that leadership, right? We have been much more thoughtful about the clean energy infrastructure we need than we have been about the human infrastructure that we
Mm.
need. And I think that actually is, Monica, where, to come back just a little bit on the climate anxiety piece, we've done a pretty darn good job of waking people up,
Yeah.
but a really bad job of helping people be in that awakeness
Yeah.
and to know what to do with that awakeness.
Mm.
And I mentioned my friend Sherry Mitchell. She says, the feelings that we have are not something wrong with us, the grief, the anxiety, the anger, the sense of betrayal, maybe for young people.
Yeah.
They are a sense of something being righted within us. But we have to have space and support to check in and be with those emotions, learn from them, be guided by them. They are often telling us what we really care about, what we love, what our deepest sources of motivation are. And so if we try to kind of shove them aside and shut them down and get on with solutions, I think we actually shortchange ourselves on really powerful fuel,
Mhm.
clean fuel, renewable fuel. Um, so that's something I feel really, really passionate about. And when you come to the solution set, there are so darn many. right? We all know there's not a silver bullet. There's not even a put them on one hand set of solutions. So many things have to change. And so I also understand for people, they look at that set of solutions and they're like, whoa, they flip through 100 solutions in drawdown and may go, I have no idea where I fit into this.
Mm-hmm.
And within climate wayfinding, when we come to solutions, we invite in not just the rational mind and the math that we see in work like Project Drawdown, but our curiosity, our energy. I mean, Steve, my guess is you didn't sit down and do a, rational analysis of what should be done in Chat Hills. You felt this fire in the belly that was drawing you into what really became the work of your life. And I think tapping into that deeper knowing about really what we're jazzed about, right? Like what we are excited enough about to do and keep doing for the long haul.
And I think one of the movements that really has changed our society is the non-smoking.
Mm,
Uh, I don't know if you remember, Catherine. Here,
yeah.
you're. I'm trying to who's what age,
Yeah.
but I never could live in a smoke-free environment.
I
And
know.
that began with a group of airline stewardesses that decided they couldn't stand it anymore and convinced
Mm,
the airline to just take the worst 5 rows and make them non-smoking. And lo and
mm,
behold, those are the seats everyone started choosing. In the restaurant industry, I remember
yeah.
when NRA made this thing, well, just take the back corner and see what happens.
Mm,
And we did that in our restaurants, and my goodness, everyone wanted the worst tables that were non-smoking. And that's a movement
yeah.
that changed, and but it didn't come from corporations, it didn't come from government, it came
Mm,
from people. And
yeah.
how do we do that in segments of the environmental movement?
Mm, mm. That's such a good example. And it makes me think too, Steve, about, the ways that grew also into saying, hey, we don't want to have advertising from
That's right.
tobacco companies anymore. We don't want to have advertising for guns anymore. What if we said we don't want to have advertising for fossil fuels anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Because the pollution from burning fossil fuels is the number one killer on the planet.
Yeah.
It's so diffuse that it's hard to put our finger on, but we should just say, we don't want to hear these stories anymore,
So how do
right?
we that one segment and start?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and the USC just came out. They're doing a huge work on Alzheimer's,
Mm,
and they just came out pollution. Los Angeles. That's my father passed a couple years ago. Grew up in Los Angeles. Born in the 30s.
yep.
Lived through the whole really really bad pollution in LA. And Alzheimer's is a huge consequence of that pollution, which is because of fossil fuel.
Yep. I'm so sorry to hear that, Monica. My dad
Yeah.
also
Mm.
passed from Alzheimer's and grew up
Very
in Queens, and my guess is that was true for him too.
Yeah.
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 So, how do we share these stories? And I think you're right. I'm glad we circled back on it because the overwhelm of the grief and the fear, it paralyzes you. And I think that goes back to the mindfulness and the guides and the community. If we can come
Yeah.
together, then we have a shared purpose and guide. And
Yeah.
I do think that the solutions are there is this um, it's not disparity, but tech will save us. We're just going to
Mm,
suck everything, all the carbon out of the air. It's going to be fine. Versus it's your responsibility. Which we realized that the oil companies were telling us with the carbon footprint that wasn't created by a person. That was created by a PR person who
yeah.
tried to tell us you're the problem. I'm not demanding a plastic soda bottle. I
Yeah.
think I could probably get my soda out of an aluminum can.
Yeah.
So
It's such a displacement
Mhm.
of accountability and responsibility, right? To say, well, you consumers and all your bad habits and needs and wishes and desires. But of
You're the
course,
problem.
it benefits them, right? If we're busy trying to recycle perfectly and we're not organizing, right? We're not showing up to marches or protests. We're not gathering together and making demands. We're not running our own political campaigns, right, to get into office and rewrite the rules. It helps if we're just busy thinking only about our personal carbon footprint. And
Yeah.
there are things that we can do in our personal lives, right? And I think about those as really good ways to take quick action that makes us feel aligned with our values, right? Makes us feel connected with the future that we want. But we can't stop there because the professional sphere is so important. And then, of course, the sphere of our shared public life, right? In this blessed democracy, struggling as it is.
It's Super South, which we just spoke at, and at the end of it, that hand went up, and it's like, well, what can we do?
Mm.
And I said, um, go home and get rid of your lawn and start your community, get rid of all lawns in your community, and start buying your food from someone you know.
Mm.
Two simple things
Yeah,
that everyone in this room could probably go do. And I've gotten to the point, okay, I'm just gonna make a simple thing.
yeah,
But it's broad, but it takes will. Both of those things take tremendous will, but they're both totally available to anyone. And they
totally.
make huge changes.
Yeah.
The fact that we have 300 kids here living permanently and not one report a sign of asthma
Mm.
is two things. We have no chemicals, and we drive in golf carts and walk a lot. And when you do drive, it's 50 miles an hour. So we don't have a lot of the pollution that we find in our cities.
Yeah,
Mm,
that's amazing. Lucky kiddos.
Yeah.
yeah. So, as we have about, another 5 or 10 minutes, I want to sort of talk about your writing,
Mm.
because obviously they're books. And I do think it's super important to find community, that mindfulness, and then purpose and simple solutions that can come together, as well as putting pressure on our leaders, because I think that's super important. And I do know in this day and time of spring 2026 is that in April, there's a lot going on. So that's also everything.
Yeah,
We're very distracted. We're not sure what
yeah.
to focus on, and so again, there's even more anxiety beyond climate. But talk about imagination,
Mm.
because I do think, we talk about like here, biophilic solutions or start in your own backyard, using your imaginations to
Mm.
find your way with climate.
Mm.
Uh, imagination, I'm quoting you now, imagination wants room to roam. And if we absolve any expectations to see clear contours of what's ahead, if we're open to receiving whatever comes, we can engage with vision not as a weighty, serious task, but as creative play.
Mm.
I just so moved by that. And so why is cultivating that sense of imagination and play, and Steve speaks about this a lot, so I'm a little bit
Mm.
going to ask both of you, why is that play and imagination so essential to the work ahead that we
Mm.
all need to do?
Mm. Mm. Thank you for Thank you for reading that, Monica. It's always really fun
For
to
writing
hear kind
it,
of what if there was a piece that really spoke to
reflected
someone,
back.
resonated. So I think we're so trained to imagine the futures we don't want, right? We're so trained to imagine catastrophe, chaos, something terrible ahead, or just to imagine that things pretty much stay as they are,
I mean,
right?
look at our movies. They're
Totally,
dystopian, and we play
totally.
them.
Totally. There was an essay in All We Can Save by Kendra Pierre-Louis called Wakanda Doesn't Have Suburbs. And it was about that very thing, that we have so few cultural touchstones, so few films, so few books that are actually, hey, look how good it could be. And Wakanda in Black Panther being an
But
exception to that. So I think that's kind of, the heady level. But for ourselves individually, I think the invitation to cast not way into the future, but there's an exercise we do in the program, and it's also in the book. It's a guided meditation and free writing exercise to look 3 years forward to where we could imagine ourselves being, what we'd be doing. We really get into like imagining the specifics of a meaningful day of engagement on climate and sustainability. And people come out of that so surprised sometimes by what they've glimpsed, by what they've seen, or so affirmed by what they've glimpsed, what they've seen. And it's about, seeing with this more perceptive inner eye to see feelingly into the future. Because if the future lives anywhere, it's in our minds and then it's between us, right?
Mhm.
I think about you, Steve, and your capacity to see what could be on
Mhm.
this land that has become Serenbe, that maybe others just couldn't glimpse it, right? But your imaginative wisdom and imaginative play was so strong that then you were able to build all of this possibility into what now exists. And I think it's a superpower that doesn't just live with, like wise mystics or, whiz bang entrepreneurs. Like we all have this
Mhm.
capacity within us. And I think welcoming that in with a sense of play, with a sense of joy, with a sense of like, let's just see what we see, what's the worst that could happen,
Yeah.
is really important.
Yeah. Well, and that's such an inspiring way for us to end that, we do have the answers. We are part of those answers, and we encourage everybody to go out and get the book. So tell us, how can we
Mm.
support your work? Where can they get their hands on it?
So if you are in Serenbe, you can find signed copies of the book at Hills and Hamlets. We're having a wonderful hometown book launch at the Carter Library on May 4th.
Love it.
And if you're not local to the Atlanta area, to Chattahoochee Hills, you can find all the things about the book at climatewayfinding.earth. The book is there. The book tour stops all over the country. Reading groups, if you're interested in that, you can sign up and we'll send you a set of materials to take the journey of climate wayfinding with friends, family, coworkers, people in your neck of the woods. And I think those are the big things. Oh, one last thing, Monica, on the art piece.
Yes.
We have a partnership with the wonderful bookshop.org that is offering, before publication on May 5th, they're offering 15% off and a limited edition art print that's
Ah,
inspired by the book. So people
beautiful.
can find that as well.
Well, Catherine, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're super, super busy. Steve,
This
thank
is
you.
my pleasure.
And I'm only regret that people cannot see your eyes. You are so alive, Catherine. You are really ready to go out and motivate people to do what they can. So
Oh,
good luck with this tour.
Yeah.
thank
Thank you.
you, dear friend. Thank you.
See you soon.